Negotiating the traffic at Melbourne, 4 o'clock in the morning, is easy. There are no traffic jams or red lights, and so we make it to the hospital in record-breaking time. Despite that, in those 15 minutes, my wife still managed to groan every kilometre, just like a constipated wrestler. When we turn up in the emergency room, we're quickly whisked away and up to the delivery suite. As I put that bag that's been sitting by our front door for the last 2 weeks in the corner of the room, my wife gets undressed, puts on that gown, lays on the table. The midwife starts to connect her to all the machinery, and the OB comes over, slips on some gloves, and scooches over to see what's going on. Looks like just your hindwaters are broken. We're going to have to do something about that. And she reaches behind her and pulls out a hook. Looks like something out of a Herman Melville novel. I'm staying at the top end of the bed. I don't want to see anything of what's going on at this point. The light gets adjusted, and she prods and pokes and scrapes. And she waits for that rush of clear yellow liquor. But something else comes out instead. Something a deep cherry red. I look, and I see that look on her face that we've seen before. It's that, oh fuck, look. It's the one that tells you that something has gone terribly, horribly wrong. My wife and I both look at her, but she says nothing. What's going on in the CTG? Can you show me? But the CTG hasn't been connected yet. Okay, let's get the boss in, get the ultrasound machine, let's see what's going on. And a minute later, a tired man wearing rumpled bruised scrubs comes in, wheeling a machine that looks like it's something out of the 1980s. As he launches the boot up sequence, he walks to the foot of the bed, takes a look to see what's going on, and immediately turns on his heels and walks to the wall phone. His whispered words are made louder by the switchboard operator over the overhead 10-way. Code green, Labour ward. And in that minute, the room becomes filled with more men and women in crumpled suits. I'm pushed to the corner of the room as the brakes are switched off the bed. Oxygen's chucked on top of it, and the doors are slammed open. I have never run down a hospital corridor so fast in my life. The doors to theatre and the bright lights beckon my wife and unborn daughter into the world. I make a move to step over to the threshold, but a strong arm bars me. Excuse me, sir, you're going to have to go and sit and wait over here. And so I'm led to sit in a chair in recovery. The recovery room of an operating theatre is a cold, lonely place at 4 o'clock in the morning. Sodium orange lights cast harsh shadows, and all I can hear is the overhead thump, thump, thump of the air conditioning. It's interrupted by another call from overhead. Code blue neonatal, Theatre 1. And I know what that should mean. I've been on that team so many times. It means running into the room, drying that baby with a little towel, and very soon, my daughter, Elizabeth, would be welcomed into the world and brought out to me. And so I wait. A head pokes around the corner. Don't worry, sir, someone will be able to tell you what's going on in a minute. And so I wait. And 1 minute stretches into 2, 5, 15 long minutes. I don't know how long it took her to get across the floor. 30 seconds, 30 minutes. I was already lost at that point. As the doctor looked over to me, she said, "Mr. Tagg, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you." It's that warning shot. Despite our best efforts, we were unable to. And then her words were lost, just like our dreams for the future and our daughter. In Australia, there's a baby born every 108 seconds. In the US, it's about every 8 seconds. And 85% of those will come into the world needing no help from us. They come in screaming and crying despite what we do. Maybe 1 in 40 need a rub down with a towel, a bit of supplemental oxygen. 1 in 100 may need a bit of CPAP. 1 in 1,000 need what we would call active resuscitation, pressing on the chest, plastic tubes down their throat. But babies still die. So how many of you have done a neonatal resuscitation course? Can you put your hands up? How many of you were told what to do with the parents in that situation? So I think we've come around to the idea that parents are allowed to be there when we deal with critically ill and injured children. But no one has a clue what to do with the parents when they're resuscitating a baby. Babies aren't supposed to die. And so we're left sitting in the chair outside. Perhaps in some sort of benevolent paternalism, we're pushed out of the way because we don't want to see what's going on. I think it'd be nice to be given the choice. What would be great was if we had a seasoned resuscitation coach, a midwife, a nurse, a doctor, who could explain to us what's going on at the time, could help us make sense of what's happening. And then, if things go wrong, they can help us change our feelings, help us mitigate that denial, the anger, all those classical grief responses. I have flashbulb memories of that time in hospital. I don't really remember the words said, but I remember the feelings I felt. I remember hearing my wife scream from the operating theatre as she woke up from the anesthetic and was told that our daughter had died. I remember holding her in my arms, watching her pink nail beds turn brown as she cooled to room temperature. I remember sitting in a dark office on my own, calling our parents in England and telling them they would never get to hold their granddaughter. You see, there's a societal stigma about dealing with dead children. We don't want to talk about it in case it's infectious. For some reason, society seems to think that it's our fault, that the mother done something wrong during pregnancy. They drank the wrong thing, did the wrong exercise, had a glass of wine. And that leaks out into the healthcare system. So that when we're on the gynae ward with Tess recovering her from her cesarean section, the doctors wouldn't look us in the eye. The nurses wouldn't come when the call bell was pushed. And so basic healthcare got left aside, and I got to change catheters for my wife. But despite this, I still remember some of the kindness too. I remember the doctor that came in to check Tess's wounds the day after her operation, who sat down on the end of her bed and burst into huge, heavy tears. I remember the social worker that arranged for us to have our only family portrait done on a Sunday morning. And I remember the kindness of the nurse that came into the room and told us that our daughter looked beautiful. Flash forward 6 years, and our fourth daughter, Rosie, is born. Children, since that point, were all born by cesarean section. We couldn't bear to have anyone go beyond 38 weeks just because of the anxiety and stress it was caused. We needed a sense of control. And everything went well, for the first 24 hours at least. As someone who spends most of his time writing about pediatrics, I'm always up for an angle to do something new. And so I had this amazing blog series planned all about the normal neonates. In that first day of Rosie's life, I'd taken pictures of meconium-filled diapers. I've taken photos of horrible, slimy vermix. I'd even put the placenta in a pot to take home and play with. And so these were the thoughts that were going through my head the next day as I took my middle child, the noisiest one, out into the garden so the audiologist can continue with their hearing test. 5 minutes into playing peekaboo, I felt, before I even heard the overhead speaker click into life, code blue neonatal, Ward 4 South. There were 26 newborn babies on that ward that day. And I knew in that instant who that call was for. We made our way back into Tess's room, and there on the resuscitaire was our day-old baby Rosie, grey, lifeless. My wife and eldest daughter standing by her side, sobbing. With each press of the bag valve mask, her little chest began to rise and fall, rise and fall. And the resuscitation team came into the room, not pushing us backwards this time, but pushing us towards our daughter. A friendly medical student took my 2 children out of the room, jacked them up on iPads and fluorescent-colored drinks. And I was allowed to be there as a part of the team while they worked on Rosie. The doctor looked over to us and explained what was going on. A calm voice, infectious in the room. She barely skipped a beat when she recognized me as the doctor who taught her neonatal resuscitation 5 years earlier. We often come across patients on the worst days of their lives. The 22nd of August 2010 was the worst day of mine. But I don't like to dwell on the darker things that it makes me think. I like to hope that although it's fundamentally changed me as a person, that it's made me a better doctor. I practice and teach neonatal resuscitation with the fervor that most emergency physicians reserve just for the failed airway drill that they'll never do. I remember and allow and support parents coming in when we're looking after their ill children, whether they're a minute old, an hour old, or a day old. And then, when I look after patients and parents who are having that worst day, I remember what it was like to sit in that chair in recovery on my own. I remember those small sparks of kindness and compassion that were shown to me. And for those parents, when everything seemed like it was at its worst and its darkest, I like to try and shine a little bit of light on it. And I hope you too can. Thank you.